You know, there's a lot of issues in education, and you're trying to educate people well. And one of those is management. But luckily for you all, we got an expert to help us on the other side.
Bueno! Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the South Star Classroom. I am Omar Yanar. We got with us the beard of knowledge, the beard of wisdom, David Castillo, and the radiant Jubilee Ransom. Jubilee, ladies first, you look amazing. How are you feeling today? Right, we can't hear you. You're
Sorry, I said thank you so much. Today I am tired, but also energized because the weather has been so beautiful. The sun has been out. It's just been wonderful. So I'm all good. How are you?
So you're saying the sun will come out tomorrow? That's your bottom dollar. That tomorrow, but
I was
tomorrow
singing
today.
That. Yes, that's about right.
Very nice, man. David, brother, good to see you. How are you today?
I am good. The weather here is also taking a turn for the better. I also woke up to a very cool little article that, let's see if we can do this real quick without taking up too much time, if I may. Can I play a little video?
I mean, come on, man. It's our show. Let's do what you got.
Okay, let's see. Hold on one second.
I got to do what you did when you did on the album.
So back in 2002 or 2003, I accepted my first position as a founding teacher at Oakland Unity High School. Taught there for 3 years, eventually went on to become the principal for 7 years. And I woke up to this news today that the school is still thriving, right? I mean, it's just like it's in the water. And so I just wanted to give them a quick shout out.
It was a celebration at Oakland Unity High School on Friday. Students gathering for their so-called Decision Day, where graduating seniors announce what college they'll be attending in the fall. This year, that includes Salvador Terriquez, who will be attending UC Davis in the hopes of becoming a neonatal surgeon.
I think it's extremely important that babies have the care that they need, and also prenatal care for women to have that access.
But Salvador isn't unique at Oakland Unity. This year, 80% of their students will continue on to four-year colleges or universities, a statistic that far exceeds the 50% average for Black and brown students in the city as a whole.
That changes their trajectory, not just for themselves, but for everyone in their family who comes behind them, now has a role model and a mentor about how do you go to college and how do you actually enter a professional career.
Oakland Unity's principal, William Nee, says creating an environment for students to succeed is no accident. Nee tells us it's something he and his staff work on daily.
You just have to kind of find a way to connect with people and earn their trust, because to ask them to really try, it takes trust for people to really try.
That trust permeates down throughout.
All right, we can cut it off there, but
and I wanted
to just show that. Because I woke up to that today and I was thinking, I haven't been there for, I don't know how long. I haven't worked there in probably a decade, maybe less, but there's something in the water. Something happened. I hired Will Nee as a teacher. He was a Harvard guy, and I hired him to teach English, and he taught English there for many years and eventually became the principal, and he's obviously still there. So something about culture, right? So congratulations to all the students at Oakland Unity High School.
Man, that's huge, dude. Oh, can we do one of these? Like, we got Jubilee always tries to
get I'm not done. It's just,
but like I don't know how they
I don't know. So I'm just gonna have to make my own rain or my own confetti.
Here comes the rain again. Yeah,
That's
man.
my check-in.
I
That's
gotta tell you,
awesome.
I was gonna share like the ridiculous things that are going on in the state of Texas and Governor Greg Abbott holding education hostage. But now, like, that was such a like feel good story and such a wonderful thing to say that I'm just gonna completely like revamp my check-in altogether. Like, why would I want to be a Debbie Downer after having such a glorious moment of celebration and excitement for your school that you started, man? I will say this, dude. Like, my quick check-in. We have a guest with us today. He's a very good friend of mine from Harvard, from the Kennedy School. This man is an operational and management guru. I may go as far as saying genius, and it's a damn shame he can't hear this because he's not on the podcast yet. And I think, David, I'm going to give
He's
you
on. He can hear you. He
Okay,
can hear you.
get a little fodder to share some stories to get our show started. Because ultimately, like, I think our show today is all about management. And it kind of isn't, it's not kind of, it's definitively within this leadership sector that we have, shows, maybe about once a month where we really kind of zero in on leadership and leadership in schools. And part of that leadership is so much about the skill set of management. And I got to tell you, David, like, you must have managed that school so exceptionally well and created such great systems and such a great culture for it to perpetuate for that long, because it's been 10 years since you've been there.
Yeah, something like that. Yep.
Yeah. So I got to tell you, like, I'm just going to plant a seed really quick to say in our show, I'd love to hear maybe some of those really effective strategies, because that's question number 2, that you implemented at that school that has led to a decades-long level of success far after you left. Because I think that is the sign of exceptional leadership, is that when you leave an institution, does it maintain the excellence that it had while you were there? Mr. Cash rules everything around me, Mr. The Real Dr. Charles Cole. We did some check-ins while you were gone. We got to check in with the pup, but we've not heard from you. Brother, how you doing today, man? I love the gear. I love the glasses.
This is my travel gear. I have like 2 or 3 outfits that when I got to travel, I just wear those. Sweatsuit or, sport coat or something.
That's smart,
like that.
Man.
I know, man. It's just it cuts down on decision making when you got to make a lot of decisions. I'm good, man. On the road again, undisclosed location. I'm getting my Omar Yanar on. You know what I'm saying? International man of mystery out here. But man, I had been doing some great stuff. Was in Memphis a few days ago for an event we had. Just around talking about education with like these parents, these teachers, these educators. It was a very intimate dinner. It was really dope. And it's a lot going on in Memphis. And so I really thoroughly enjoyed that. And so I'm good. I'm happy that I was able to make the show. It was a toss up if I was going to be ready in time, but it worked out.
Man, I love having the whole team together. Any news on our guest? Is it kind of any minute he'll join us, or are we?
He's right there, brother. He's here.
Oh, that's good news, man. So can we bring him in?
We can bring him in. I didn't know if you wanted to do a big intro for him, but
I do. So
drum roll. We got a drum roll, brother. It's all good.
We got a drum roll in, ladies and gentlemen. This man is a genius. This man is an operational guru. This man has led public health his whole life. Currently working for actually Prince George County Health, if that's correct, where I think Jubilee, that's right around your neighborhood. I've known Olo now over the better part of a decade, which is crazy that we've known each other that long. Friendship conceived in 2008. That has been going very strong, almost 15 years now. And in those 15 years, I think we've had extended conversations about how organizations do operations, but particularly how things are managed. And he's had some really relevant conversations about his experience in his various professions. Now, while they've been in the healthcare profession, ladies and gentlemen, management is management. And I think that we'll tie that into management blunders and success stories that we've seen in education. But really, this is really a conversation about how does effective management move structures forward, and what are some of the simple things that we can get done in our schools to make sure that move ahead. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ololande, Olo, if you can go ahead and give yourself a quick introduction as well. We're happy to have you on, man. Ololade.
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, we can, sir. Thank you.
Sound great.
Hey, just oh, wonderful. I had some technical difficulties. I surmounted it with my phone ultimately. So I'm logging in on my phone. But my name is Ololade Olakemi. I go by Olo. I've gone by that since the 7th grade. So feel free to call me by that. You know, I've known Omar a long time, and he's seen my journey. My journey's been primarily in public health and human services. I kind of started out wanting to go into medicine, actually, and I was all down for that, you know, for pretty much my whole childhood until I got to college. I graduated from college, and I was working at the American Medical Association, and that's when I started getting into public health and that work. And I started to think, well, you know, maybe I'll just do the medicine half time and I'll do this other stuff the other time. Then it's like, you know, maybe I'll do medicine, you know, one day a week, and then I'll do this kind of other policy stuff on the side, you know, most of that time. So it got to the point where I was like, well, it makes sense. Why am I going to medical school if I'm only want to be spending like half day a week doing it? So I ended up going to graduate school, which is where I met Omar. And while there, working in a number of capacities on it. The great thing about the Kennedy School where we went to was people are doing all sorts of stuff. People are running political campaigns, running their own nonprofits. We had our own group where we were doing community development down in the Mississippi Delta. And what I saw when I was doing that work was that we had a lot of great organizations trying to do good in the community, but the organizations, many of them weren't really run that well. So honestly, and
organizations weren't organized.
Yeah, they weren't organized. And so I kept thinking to myself, hey, you know, it's almost like the organization is working against people. The policies and the procedures are working against people. And that's what kind of gave the light bulb in my head that this is what I want to do. Like, I would love, you know, doing good in the community, but I want to make sure that we can build organizations that can perform, that can actually help people do the right thing as opposed to be an obstacle in their way. So that's kind of where I made my niche, and I started getting into strategy, getting into performance management, and trying to figure out how do you create these high performing organizations that can be the vehicles for the energies of all these people who want to do such good things in the world. So that's my journey.
That's a beautiful ass introduction, man. And I think that you segued really well, because I think the first thing I'm going to ask is I'd love to hear maybe a story or two about your experience in the Delta. That was with, I know Marshall Gans was part of that project. And maybe tie that into a little bit of like our first question really is like for us in the audience, and we'd love to hear from our audience as well. We got a lively audience. I'm expecting many a comment for this episode, but it's like, I'd love to hear what are some of those blunders that have gotten in the way of progress and efficiency. You said it really well, where it's like, man, if we just had better organization, things would be going absolutely more efficient. So where did you see a lot of the problems? And then we'll chime in kind of on how we've seen that happen in education.
I think the biggest blunder that I see kind of everywhere that I go is people don't concentrate on building trust as a management imperative. I think.
Okay, expand on that.
being able to build trust is really the building blocks of building any kind of strong organization. When you see a lack of trust, you see people not empowering others, not letting others do what they need to do. You see people developing policies and procedures that instead of having 2 steps, they have 20 steps. And a lot of those because, hey, I don't trust you. I want to build in these approval steps and these checks and balances because ultimately I don't trust you to do the work. So I feel like trust in and of itself is something that has to be cultivated. It has to be done deliberately. Because if you're not doing something deliberately, you're probably not going to get to your goals. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've seen, and it manifests itself in a lot of ways.
So, like, did you see that play out at the Mississippi Delta, or like at where you're at currently?
I mean, I feel like I see that play everywhere that I've ever worked. When I got to this job, for instance, I got into it at the middle of the pandemic. We were trying to roll out we just got all our vaccines in. We were trying to roll them out as fast as possible. And the health department that I went to was last in the state at getting vaccine out the door. So people were in the streets are complaining. The state was saying, what are you all doing? So a lot of what I did when I came in was to start to listen to people, to start to build trust, and to develop a structure that can use trust to actually empower people. So, for instance, we had the people who were leading the whole pandemic effort, and I became one of those leaders. But all the decisions went through centrally those people at the top. So I actually went, and that creates inefficiencies in communication.
Yeah, man,
it slows down everything.
Model, right?
Yeah, so it's the exact opposite. So I created a survey that for all the people that said, hey, show me who you think you report to in the structure. And there's like 300 people in this. And I asked everybody, and almost everybody said, hey, we're reporting up to you. It's this big hub and spoke. Everybody is reporting to us. And I was like, this has got to change. So we have to learn to trust the people who we hire to do their jobs. And that was a lot of training of everybody around us to say, hey, you have to empower people. You have to learn to let go of the things that you are keeping control of, because that makes it so that we are not getting anything done. That was some of the biggest transitions I've seen. And I've seen that literally everywhere that I've worked at. And I think I've worked at a lot of government, and I feel government is often built around setting up these structures to monitor people. But at that end stage, it's all about trust.
I gotta expand on that like hugely, because I don't even know if like I talk about this immensely. And first, let me just ask 2 quick questions. I really want to get the rest of the team in on this, because I see David shaking his head being like, damn, dude, I've been there. I've seen this. This is what happens, man. I'd love to ask you all about this specific component of trust, because it's grossly misunderstood and grossly underestimated. But 2 quick questions. 1, did you get the trusting from Marshall, or did you get it from like all of Patrick Lencioni's books?
Oh, I mean, I think I got the trusting early. I got that back in the Kennedy School from Marshall Gans, because you have to, at that point, you're trying to organize people. You don't have money to give them. You don't have any real financial incentives at all. So you have to be able to inspire people and have folks trust in you. And you have to trust in a lot of other people in order to try to, to empower them to do the work that they need to do. Because if you are a team of one in any type of organizing effort, you've already failed, because that's essentially the basic point of what you're trying to do. You're trying to build organization. You're trying to empower folks to do things and increase the scope of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, man, I'm typing into the chat right now to share with our audience in the comments section. And I don't want to quiz you because I just remember it, but you remember Gans's leadership definition by heart? Because I certainly recite it constantly to our staff.
It is not kind, Omar, to bring your guest on and then get them.
Exactly right, exactly. They say no.
Harder to book them the second time.
So I agree, man. Marshall Gans, who is our professor, who ran basically he was with Cesar Chavez. So he did a ton of the organizing work for the United Farm Workers movement. He wound up running Bobby Kennedy's campaign, and we all know sadly what happened there. And he swore off campaigns until, the young man who went to Harvard Law, who was taking this class, was like, I'm going to run for president. I need you to help me. And he was like, hell no, I'm not going to help you. And he's like, come on, man. That happened to be Barack Obama. But Marshall basically says leadership is accepting responsibility for empowering others to achieve common purpose in the face of uncertainty. And it's the kind of idea, it's this leadership model where he shows these pictures. And Olo, you made this mention, there's this picture of like a circle in the middle of a piece of paper and then every arrow pointing at it. And that's like the leadership model that I think plagues so many schools, so many districts, so many leadership organizations, where it's like, well, you're the person in charge. So 300 people are going to the same person. And Gans talks about, oh, look at that heart. Jubilee, you're jealous of the heart. You're jealous you can't get the hearts up, man. 2 hearts. Whereas the leadership model that Gans talks about is that basically the circle is in the middle. And then as the leader, the spikes go outwards. And then those spikes basically create new dots. And then those new dots go outwards because it's basically an ideology of empowerment. But I want to, kind of ask for hot takes from our team here. Where have you seen this specific issue where trust has basically been exploded because one person feels that they need to be in charge of everything and everything must go through them, causing massive problems within the school or the organization? Like, that'll ever happen to you all?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think I shared an example a couple of weeks ago about a very dysfunctional charter organization that I stepped into. And I think the big takeaway was it was just about power for people, right? Power and leadership. And when those things tend to happen, it's like the opposite of trust, right? Which you're talking about, because it becomes about people and less about a mission, right? Like, what are we here trying to accomplish? How are we going to do this? Who's going to be doing what? How are we giving feedback to one another? And being able to communicate with people in a very clear way about the work, so people don't get blindsided or get no surprises, right? And so, yeah, it's definitely happened to me. And I think, if you are, I've been in those situations, and sometimes you just can't, there's nothing that one person is going to be able to do.
Yeah.
Like, this place is sick. I just can't,
it's toxic, man.
It's too big. Right? It's too big of a project, but I like leading with the concept of building trust, because without that, you're not going to be able to get any kind of work done.
Ju, I'll let you either go or defer.
I'll pass. I'll be back.
Point on me. I think there's a bunch of ways where you've seen that trusty road. I think largely with school systems and its constituents and its parents. I think it's just tough when you keep when something is perpetually not where it needs to be, and you keep telling them it's going to get better, and then it doesn't. But I know this is more about management, but I do think that falls into that. I think that especially in a school system, a large traditional school system like the one that I worked in, I think a lot of people have lost hope. And it's hard when you got a new person coming in that's hopeful or trying to, or they're trying to change culture or whatnot. And it's funny because everybody knows the culture needs to change, but nobody has faith that is going to get to where it needs to. So it's like this perpetual cycle of disbelief and trying to do team building and bring people together. But in those environments, it's hard to hold people accountable. It's hard to create your, the best place to work where everybody's bringing in their best. And ultimately that impacts, those students and those communities. So I think management is paramount, and there's a lot of people that rise up the ranks, and it could be because of tenure or because of good work, but management is a completely different skill that often doesn't get taught. So hence my master's degree was in public administration, which was kind of all about working through those bureaucracies, and it's frustrating and it can be really difficult. So I'm glad we got Olo today. So
yeah, man, I'm gonna bounce to Olo in a second, man, because I got two major questions that are a little bit kind of an offshoot of our second major question. But first, I gotta say that if you haven't, for our audience, man, if you haven't read any of David Lencioni's books, and Olo, have you ever read any of these, man? Like The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, 4 Obsessions.
Oh,
every airport in America.
I've read a bunch of stuff. I've read a bunch of his stuff.
Yeah, man. Like every book's the same, man. Like 5 Temptations of the CEO, 5, all that shit. It's the exact same pyramid. It's the exact same kind of story. And I got to tell you, it's a really good way. It's a digestible way of getting at what Olo's saying, which is that like trust is at like the most paramount level of you're never going to get anything done if there isn't a huge amount of trust that's built amongst the team, because then everyone thinks that it's like prisoner's dilemma, right? Everyone thinks they're going to just backstab each other. And then it's a whole toxic culture of everyone's out to get me versus everyone's empowered to achieve a common purpose. And I got to ask a major question, 2 of them really. The first one being like, we've all been in a place where like you've seen a very insecure leader. And an insecure leader causes huge issues because they don't trust themselves. It causes massive ripples. So like for our audience, for ourselves, I think this is like really useful kind of consulting knowledge for all of us. If you're not at the tippy top, like there's some leader and they're not really leading the way they should be leading, and you're kind of like in the middle management position, kind of like Doc was saying, yeah, I've been in organizations where I've tried to do this and tried to do that. What can we as middle managers do if ultimately, what can we all do as middle managers if our top leader is not really leading the right way? How can we as middle managers establish greater trust without pissing off the person at the top so things get efficient? Olo, man, what do you think?
Well, for me, I feel like I've been in that position many, many a time in my career. And I think the most important thing to do is to build relationships with people. Figure out, you need to figure out the work that you need to do within that organization. And you need to figure out who has influence on that particular issue. And you need to start building relationships with those. One of the things that I learned earlier on was you have to, you're not going to be able to make big changes unless you have a coalition that's going to push for that change. So that's the first thing that you have to do. I think the next thing is to realize that although you are not maybe the head person in charge, you have a lot more power and authority than you think. There is formal authority and there's informal authority.
Oh, that's so Marshall Dancing. I love it.
Yeah. So you gain a lot more influence with people when you have not just you pushing for a change, but you have a whole coalition of people also pushing for that change and backing you. Never go about trying to make a change on your own, because you're bound to fail, and most likely you're bound to get marginalized in an organization. So, for instance, I was at a previous job of mine, and I had some changes that I needed to get made. The leadership didn't really agree with me that well, I guess I shouldn't say, they had their own agenda of what they kind of wanted to do. So I started kind of building my own networks to get things done. So this was back in let's have a good idea for this. This was back when I was at the Human Services in DC, and I wanted to implement a new program where we essentially changed how we paid rent within, and it had a lot of implications for our client population, because at the time, landlords got their rent portion in two pieces from the city of DC and then from their clients. Oftentimes clients, well, actually random times clients didn't pay. We didn't know about it. And we needed to make a change for this. So I pitched my idea to the leadership and I said, hey, the human services, they should just pay we should just pay 100% of the rent to these landlords, make them whole. Then we get to know whenever a client doesn't make their payments because they're going to be paying us. So I brought it up to them and they squashed it immediately. So because they said we don't have any way to manage this. So I started building out my network, started talking with my advocacy community. I started talking with the landlord community to see what they needed. I started working with our provider community to see what they can offer. Eventually, I found a solution when I worked with the head of the housing authority, who I was just randomly in a meeting with him, and I said, hey, we have this issue that we're trying to solve. And we had a conversation about it. He said, oh, well, we can help you out with that. We have the infrastructure to manage all those payments in our public housing infrastructure. So if you work with us, that way we can help you on this particular issue. So I eventually had a solution, working with all these people. I worked with the advocates to try to massage the plan because, I honestly wasn't even supposed to do that because we had a bad relationship with our legal advocates. But I knew that they were the people who saw all of the cracks of the Department of Human Services.
So I want to summarize that real quick, saying what I heard was essentially you not only build groups, but you went out there and actually figured out the solution to the problem. And I think the level of initiative was amazing because you took initiative where I think a lot of people get told no and hear no and all right, well, I tried. You're you heard the no and then you're like, no, there's a way around this. I can actually solve this problem if I keep at it. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, totally. And when I had to go sell it, I knew sometimes you have to sell things in a way that can get things done. So I sold it to this person who could sell it to the other person because that person's going to listen to that person and not me.
So I got to ask.
So I think you also have to know your leverage points. And you may not be the one to move this decision, but you may be able to partner with somebody who can.
Man, I love the idea of building relationships and coming at this as a group versus just coming in solo. Here's one of our audience members asked an insanely good question that I think is totally germane to this topic. How should leaders manage being challenged without the goal being to win the challenge? So how do you challenge your leader, your manager to get something done is what I'm assuming you're saying, Nikki. So it doesn't look like you're trying to win some challenge, like you're trying to be, showing this person up. It's really about challenging it to get something done effectively. If that's my correct interpretation of it. I mean, I will give you a moment to ponder. As I kind of chime in, I think this is an insanely good question because you don't want to piss someone off. What I have found oftentimes is what are the structures? Yeah, as a leader, my underlings challenge me.
I just saw underling and I thought it was funny. It felt like I was watching a Saturday morning.
I mean, I gotta ask you, I think you're asking for those who are basically your quote superiors or people superiors, because ultimately, if you're a leader and you're extraordinarily confident, you should have your people kind of challenge the ideas, right? We're here to challenge ideas and not the person. And I think that's block one of trust. When we talk about building trust is the crucial component you need in any organization to basically challenge ideologies and not the person themselves. I mean, the way I've tried to handle this in the past is just a quick one-on-one. So rather than doing it out in public in front of everybody else, I'll go to said leader and be like, hey, Like, I've got these 3 ideas, didn't want to mention it in front of everybody else, kind of wanted to have like a sidebar conversation about your thinking around this. I think that it will lead to X, Y, and Z. Whereas I think the status quo is here. Have you thought about this? And I make it more about the idea than about their decision making. Like, I'm trying to bring in value add, and that can go one of 2 ways. Like, I've had some leaders be like, damn, like, Omar, like, that's exceptional, and we should really move forward with that. I never thought about that. And I've had some people being like, you trying to take my job? They went Clubber Lang on me. I pity the fool who challenged me in front of everybody else. And it's like, okay, like, I get it. Like, leader 1 is clearly going to hear the idea, and the other person is so damn insecure that they're not going to take any kind of idea whatsoever. That's just my take on it. Ola, you got a take on this one? David, Jubilee?
I mean, for me, and I guess I'll take it from the person who gets the advice. You know, I think it's important to be able to be humble and know that, and take these opportunities as learning opportunities, because you may not be right as the leader. So you should always be open to the fact that you might be wrong, and take it as be curious. Always be curious. When I'm giving advice to people like that, I would say always be aware of the context, because you don't, as Omar was saying, you don't want to put that person in a position where their ego is going to push them in a certain direction, so that they're feeling on the spot. So now they feel that they're in a corner. You don't want to paint people in a corner. So it may be better to talk to people in private. You know, and I've made that mistake as a young leader, where you have something really important to say, you're very righteous about it. You go ahead and say it, and you feel really good about saying it in the meeting, and then the other person gets pissed at you and then does the exact opposite of what you want to do. So you've satisfied the urge of you saying what you need to say, but were you effective at all? And I think you have to make sure that, is your goal to be effective, or is your goal to be right?
Damn, that's really good, man. You had some crazy good nuggets there. I got to ask you, the be curious, was that the Ted Lasso? Because I love that Ted Lasso. God, that was a good one.
No, that wasn't. But I mean, it's from some pretty universal advice. Universal good advice.
Yeah, no, agreed. Coming at this with curiosity is always going to win. And I think I just want to put a punctuation mark on, you know, is the goal to be effective and efficient and work towards a common goal, or is it to be the smartest person in the room and be right? I mean, I think that's bananas good advice, man. Just repeating exactly what you said. Do you all have some like any kind of opinions or comments on this from the group here, from the classroom?
I mean, I can kick off on this one. I think there's a lot of wisdom there. I think, and it's almost like when you're in a classroom or you're in a training program or you're learning these things. Like, I think that was, like you said, there was some nuggets and some gems in there. I think it can be different when the rubber's hitting the road. I think that it's tougher in the heat of battle, when it's like, look, this is what needs to happen. And I think for me, if I'm being very honest, and I'm always pretty clear on my leadership style and who's the type of people that I want on my team. Because if you are on my team, you got to understand that, one, you're here because I believe in you and you have a skill. This isn't like I'm not doing you a favor by you being here. You know, we hired you to do something. I'm doing something. We get paid. That's the reward. But I can't, if it's coming down to the well-being of the people that we serve, that need us, that's in a much different position that we are, in a more vulnerable position, I can't be negotiating nuggets of your happiness while we're failing at the larger thing that we need to do. I think that's so I get it. And I think you try to instill those things and make them the bedrock and baseline of who you are. But I also, you know, sometimes you need some grace on the front end, because I think passionate leaders are passionate leaders. And I think sometimes Principal David got to get in somebody. I think when Jubilee is coming on the campus and consulting, I think she has to have some hard truths. I think Omar running the school, you know, it might not always be, you know, like we want to have a good culture here, but if our culture starts on excellence, you know, sometimes I may not check all the boxes when I need to speak with you about something to motivate you. You know, it's how a general goes in a battle with you, you know, tells the difference. I've worked with some good ones, I worked with some bad ones, you know, but like Antoine, when Antoine Wilson was the superintendent, whatever people say or feel about him, I loved working with him. And it's because when we had problems, dude would roll up his sleeves and he was out there with us in front of people, and we were having those conversations. It's much easier to take feedback from people like that than folks that don't necessarily do that. So hopefully I didn't veer off too much, because I thought what you said, Olo, was profound. But you know, I wanted to just, you know, give that real and honest answer, because sometimes it's not like that. I've been in management and education and in healthcare, and sometimes when the blue light goes off in healthcare, we got to save this life, man. Like, so we'll take care of you on the back end, but these people got to come first.
Yeah, man. Y'all have anything? I'm gonna jump in here. I wanted to segue in a little bit more into the second question. We spent a lot of time on trust, Olo. I kind of wanted to ask you if you thought there was another extraordinarily high lever management technique that we could be sharing with our audience. And before that, I just wanted to put an exclamation point on something that you said that Marshall Ganz talks about a lot that I don't want to dismiss, is this idea about empowerment. So for our audience, there's this incredibly amazing book called It's the Manager. And it's based off of an old book called The 12 Elements of Great Managing. And really, this book's badass. So this isn't just, you know, someone who decided to, you know, think of what are the 12 greatest ways of managing. Gallup, the phenomenal people who do, like, I don't know, every survey across like the world at this point, was like, we're going to ask tens of thousands of people who have managers, what are the most effective management tools for them? What works for them? Why do they like their manager? And one of the things that I think really sticks out for me, and maybe Ola, you want to expand on this one or choose another management tool, is this idea of empowerment. And what we mean by that is, like, I look at, you know, out of the 12, one of them, my supervisor or someone at work, seems to care about me as a person. My supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. Number 6 is there is someone at work who encourages my development. Number 7, my work at work, my opinions seem to count. Number 11, in the last 6 months, someone at work has talked to me about my progress. Number 12, the last year, I've had opportunities to work, to learn, and to grow. All of these are basically saying the exact same thing, is that there is someone here that is invested in empowering me. So they're not just telling me what to do and punishing me when I don't do things. They are here to not just hold me accountable, but to raise me up and empower me and provide a learning opportunity, growth skill set, recognize good work, coaching. The entire coaching model of management is something that I think goes grossly under discussed. And that is truly when Marshall Ganz talks about empowerment, is this is how we empower others. We provide them coaching to get them into a better place tomorrow than they were today. So Olo, I just wanted your hot take on, like, do you feel, how do you feel about that? Or you can take this in a direction of like, no, actually, you know what? I've got another skill set that I think is also high lever.
No, I mean, I definitely agree with that. And, you know, I'm familiar with that survey from the Gallup Q12. So I've used that, and I've also used the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey to measure employee engagement. And there's a lot of great stuff within to learn from using those surveys and then acting upon what you learn from those surveys. I mean, I would say another big lever that I use in working with my managers, and it's really a very general one. Have a focus on people. It's funny how often I've been in places where managers don't focus on the people that they're managing. They focus on the work, but not the manager. So you're in a meeting and you're talking with your boss and they're asking you about this project, that project, this project. Where is it on this? Where are we on this project? And then you end the meeting and no one's asked you, how are you developing? What are your goals? What are we doing to get you to your goals? How are you doing with your people? How is so-and-so that you're managing doing on their goals? How are you working to empower this person? So I try to work with my managers as a basic step is you have to make sure to be deliberate about focusing on the people aspect of management and not just focusing on managing the projects per se, because that's an important part of doing management as well. But oftentimes I feel like that crowds out all your time. So I actually started with my managers where we're not going to spend all of our time talking about the project. We spend half of our time at the most, and the rest of our time we are spending on people talk. We're talking about people's goals. We're talking about what they're doing to empower their folks in concrete terms. We're doing coaching. So I think you have to specifically make time for this, or else it'll be always one of those things that you'll get to when you can. But there are always going to be projects. There's always going to be things to get done. But at the end of the day, you need people to get them done.
Man, I mean, I just want to take a minute to let that sink in, which is you're absolutely right. We get so focused in on doing the work, and I'm literally just repeating what you're saying, right? That we forget about how are we developing someone to become a better manager themselves, a better person themselves, because this thing cascades out, right? So if I'm able to incorporate into my check-ins, how are you doing? How's your family? Tell me about your goals this year. What is it that you're trying to achieve? Where are you having some difficulty? How are you having difficulty with an employee? How can I coach you through that so that you're more successful? Where can you come to me so that if you don't know something or are having difficulty kind of even thinking through it, we can think through it together? I mean, I'm literally just repeating what you're saying. And I think that goes, I mean, I would arguably say that like the overwhelming majority of people listening probably had a huge light bulb moment right now to be like, damn, you know what? You're right. Like, where are we taking the time to do that? Because that becomes the empowerment component of someone cares about me. It's not just about the project. Like they're investing their time to develop me as a leader and develop me as a person and develop me as a manager. I mean, that is absolutely profound. Does you all got any thoughts on that? Because that's please.
My brain is going on like taking copious notes and trying not to forget my thoughts. But a couple of things. One, I feel like a great manager eventually works themselves out of a job.
Yep.
An effective manager. And I don't really love spending a lot of time talking about management versus leadership, because management makes me feel like hoarding people or trying to move people towards a certain point. And leadership, to me, it combines, the need to kind of have some oversight while inspiring people to move to a certain point. And I remember, when I was principal and I took over a school that did not, at the time I took it over, have strong systems and structures for, data analysis, for really looking at student work and using data to inform decisions just throughout the school and related to all stakeholders. And so both when I was an assistant principal and a principal, they brought me on because of my strong background in building strong school culture and building, systems around data analysis and decision making. Well, one of my proudest moments as a principal was when I didn't have to send out any reminders about the upcoming data cycle, what data you needed to look at, when you needed to administer assessments, when you needed to plan out your reteaching or corrective instruction. Right. I just walked around one day and I realized that the process that I had to do some really heavy hand holding around was now inculcated in our culture. And I wasn't needed to lead that process anymore. And so I think that's ultimately a sign of, a great manager or a great leader, that eventually they get to work themselves out of a job. And then Ola, what you said about the whole trust thing, you guys have heard me say building trusting relationships and leveraging them is my jam. But I also think second to that, I don't even know if it's second, it might go hand in hand because I don't know if you can have one without the other, is active listening, right? Like listening to people. Some people, they lead and they're just like a person taking a walk because they're not necessarily figuring out how to reach back to get some real information that can help to inform what the next steps are going to be. So I said, keep listening to gather feedback and then leverage feedback to build trust, right? In both of the scenarios that I led in, they were turnaround situations, right? And so I don't believe that building trust is linear or sequential, right? It's a dance, right? And it matters. Every single decision that we make as leaders counts, right? From whether or not we're showing up to our meetings on time, whether or not we're sending the email we said we were going to send, like all of those things add up, right? To build the container of trust that we're trying to establish with our people. And so I think listening to kind of gather that feedback, because I do know that there are several, and Ola, you might be able to attest to this, there are several organizations, and sometimes in the education sector, we could be the same. We are gathering feedback, but we do nothing about it. And so that's damaging to trust, because it's like, well, damn, I did 5 surveys. We told y'all we don't have the workbooks. We told y'all parents are still coming to pick their kids up late. We haven't seen any sort of recourse or response that's ameliorating the situation. So what's the point? And then people lose trust, right? So I think figuring out ways to, I guess what I call it is like a multi-stream feedback flow, where you're always getting feedback and then you're using that feedback to turn around and be like, we heard you, here's what we're doing about it, right? We want to try to make you whole, as you said earlier. We want to try to bring you some peace and some calm and let you know that we care, right? And in doing so, then people go, oh, not only did they ask us for the information, but they took the information, used it to make a situation better. And so now I think I'm going to trust them. It might only last for another week before before something else happens that makes me go, I don't know. But at least you got another week of a strong container where people are like, okay, this manager or this leader is trustworthy.
David, I've been running my mouth, so I wanted to hear from you before I jump back in.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm literally right now, what I've been doing, part of my day today was spent collecting survey data from a charter network and their leaders. So doing like some performance management work, and I'm looking at the data right now, and it lines up incredibly with what we've been talking about. Staff asking for the site leaders to continue getting to know us as individuals, right? Continue to build trust and provide feedback. All of these things. So just like continue to build relationships, and it just feels like it's part of what we talked about earlier. And now, like I'm actually seeing like real-time data coming in from educators, obviously working in the school setting, but this could easily translate into any corporate, not-for-profit, government entities. People want to work in environments where trust is valued, where relationships are valued. I think it's a non-negotiable for getting anything done, whether you're in government or whether you're in education or trying to sell a product. So I wanted to share that real-time data as it's coming in.
Love it, man. It's apropos.
Yeah, I think, I guess my question would be like, I'm thinking about the question. It's like, well, what is trust? Like, what does that look like for different people? Because again, I've worked in places that read the books and that they practice the compliment sandwich, or they have the conversations, right? And it feels like it's out of a book. And it's like, well, that's not really trust for me. At a job, I don't know if I care to necessarily get that from my manager per se, but maybe because I came from sports and I look at it like Greg Popovich of the San Antonio Spurs. I like that kind of trust. Like, we built championships here. So if we're having this rough year and I'm telling you to do something, the trust is built off of that track record, right? Like, so whether that person is quiet, whether that person yells, whether that person, however he does it, he's led a group of people, different groups of people, to like this promised land. And I, versus like if you look at the Charlotte Hornets coach, whoever that is and whoever that's gonna be, because it's a carousel, the culture there, you can be as nice and flowery as you want, but I'm not going to trust you if it's not turning into us winning 50 games and going to the playoffs. Like, so I guess in the education sense or the healthcare sense, it's like, are we doing our job well? Is it like I don't know. I just want the baseline to be different. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, for me, where it's like, yo, I want to be on a winning team. I want to be on a team where it's like high quality work. And this is how we get it back on. And this is what we do. And here's that track record of that. Or we're going to change this together. That person will have me run into a building for them. That person will have me working on a Saturday in the community, speaking directly with them so we can be better at our jobs. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to like everybody makes fun of like the corporatization of like all the work, right? Like Office Space is one of my favorite movies. There's a girl online right now, a woman online right now, excuse me, she's a grown woman, but she's made a whole career off of doing the up voice, like of managers that managers do, right? And it kind of is lampooning a little bit of what we talk about. And I think people want that authenticity in there. Like, I don't want to work at a place where we can keep failing, but I like it because you asked me how my day was. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to work at a place where it's like I want to come work for Omar, because when Omar's talking about his data and he gets fiery, like Omar is the most cheery out of all of us. But when Omar started talking about his data and what they're doing at his school, his voice changes, his demeanor changes. I want to go into battle with that cat. I trust him because of the product that he got. And, so hopefully I'm not saying anything counter to what we've been talking about, Olu and team, but I just wanted to get very clear on when we say trust, what do we mean? Like, if somebody's listening to this that might not be in that managerial position, it's like, I want to just make sure because trust can be different for different people.
No, I love it. That's a great question. And I got to tell you, like, that's probably a great question to kind of give a final thought on, because we're
right. I know we have to bring that one back.
Yeah. So I'll be really quick and chime in because I want to give all my time to Olo. I will say this, like, if you look at some of those sports analogies and think about what Olo said, which is, how are we working with people? I don't know if it was so much about the San Antonio Spurs coach saying, hey, how was your day? As much as it was, I don't care who's on the bench. I don't care if it's David Robinson or Tim Duncan. We're all equal. We all have equal time. And this is how I'm going to implement it, because we ain't going to have no prima donnas here. Whereas, like, you had a lot of problems with like the Lakers, right? And like that took some excessive work from like someone like Phil Jackson, who had to coach like not only the Chicago Bulls team with like Pippen and Jordan and Jesus, like Horace Grant and all those cats and Dennis Rodman, all the way to Kobe and Shaq, where it wasn't, I wonder so much if it wasn't about him asking, hey, Shaq, how was about your day? Versus Shaq, I understand that there's conflict between you and Kobe, and I'm going to squash this conflict because we have a championship to win, versus letting some prima donna shit get in the way. But that's just my hot take. Olo, this is a good ass question from the doc. What are your final thoughts on that?
Well, my final thoughts are, I think there's some often misconceptions about what trust building in an organization means. And it's not about always being, nice and polite. It's not about always saying thank you. It's always good to say thank you. I think it's a good thing. But ultimately, trust is needed in an organization because we need to get at goals. Ultimately, the goals and the results are what we're trying to get at. But in order to do that, you have to build strong teams. And you need a base of trust to be able to do that. You need trust not so you can be polite necessarily. You need trust because in order to get at goals, you're going to have different viewpoints and you are going to clash and conflict. And when you do clash with other people with different viewpoints and different beliefs and perspectives, you are going to need to be able to have some level of trust that those people have the interests, your best interest and the interest of this organization and those goals in mind when they are engaging in views that differ from yours. So you have to have that type of disagreement in order for you to ultimately feel good coming as a team to commit to a course of action, so that you can then collectively hold yourself accountable to those results and get to those goals. So it's not about being all nicey, touchy-feely. It's about laying the bedrock for those clashes that are inevitably going to come, and so you can weather those as a team together. That's my thoughts.
And this man, I mean, not only a wealth of knowledge, that's the next stage of the Lencioni pyramid right there, which is
It is.
Yeah, which leads to clarity, which leads to accountability, which leads to results. Man, this is badass. Any final thoughts from the fantastic people of the South Star Classroom?
I'll just say quickly, I think in regards to this component of building trust and what it could look like, I think, Charles, you kind of nailed it, because we've seen, we've all been part of some kind of organization where you just felt like it wasn't authentic, right? And so for me, what that boils down to is, does said leader have demonstrated results? Do they have a track record? And in education circles, we all know the charismatic education.
Woo!
What was that? There you go. The charismatic social justice education warrior, right? That has no receipts, right? And so I think receipts are important. A track record is important. I think your people have to know that you are authentic and that you do care about them, but that also at the same time, you have the experience, like you are willing to roll your sleeves up and get in there and do the heavy lifting with them. So those are a couple of components that I'm thinking about right now, but wonderful having you as our guest, sir. Thank you.
I just wanted to add one thing. Thank you. The transparency and authenticity part, right? The whole idea, to your point, to both of your points, is to make people feel safe, right? Not so that they're going to show you like all their dog pictures and baby pictures, even though that might be a part of it, but so that they'll tell the truth. And I think, like, in my experience, one of the telltale signs that we had gotten to a point where we had transparency, understanding, authenticity, and people felt professionally and psychologically safe. Not that you were going to come in and do a terrible job and not be at risk of being written up or losing your job, right? But so that you could say the truth, right? So we started doing surveys that were no longer anonymous. We started out where people could only give feedback anonymously. They didn't feel comfortable. But by the end of my tenure, people were fine with giving feedback like, this was terrible. Of course, they worded it, professionally or whatever, but they were truthful. Like, if we didn't hit the mark, we didn't hit the mark. Mm-hmm. And my name is Jubilee. I'm writing my name on this survey. And I know that the school leaders, I know Jubilee's going to read it, right? But it's all good because there's that trust there. There's that safety there that nobody's going to come for me because I'm speaking the truth, because we built this container. We have this trust throughout our school, throughout our organization, so we can speak truth. And the idea is, to your point, Olu, we're beginning with the end in mind, and we are wanting to move the organization forward, wanting to do what's best for children. So, in order for us to do that, we've got to be able to be honest and speak truth and give honest feedback.
Yes. And that was my 4:00 alarm. So we have gone over, but it's all good. Thank you, Little Wayne. But no, I think I don't have much to add, man. I thought this was I enjoy these conversations. Like I said, I'm a nerd about this stuff. So Olo, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with us. Oh, and also, like I said, as a big basketball fan, RIP to Bill Walton, who lost his battle with cancer. Really cool dude,
legend,
super hippie cat, legend dude who probably would have won more championships and titles if he was not, if he didn't have those injuries, man. But Omar, I think you put together a really dope show, and Olo, we would love to have you again too. We can, let some of this stuff breathe and go a little deeper into it.
Definitely would love to. Great talking with all y'all.
Thank you,
good, man. Yeah, so on behalf of the South Star Classroom, huge thanks to Olo, man. You were a dope guest. Please come back because we got a lot more to explore. 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. On behalf of everyone at South Star Classroom, thank you so much. We will see you next week.
Peace. And Jubilee's
come on, Jubilee. gotta get them.
I don't know. I don't.
You can even
I don't
do the
even want
thumbs
to
down
yet.
yet.
I want the audience to continue to watch you struggle. The stream is still going.